the way we have it formatted, Kirk's got a slideshow prepared, a little bit of background, and then updates on, you know, what we've been doing this year and some of our plans for next year. And as Kirk will tell you a little bit more about, we're currently searching for a new partner in sub-Saharan Africa. And that's been a really interesting search. And I think part of it, you know, for us is confirming that our approach is a good one. And so I want to start out by just thanking all of you for contributing to Water First, for, you know, helping us create this community and sustain this community of individual donors. You are making a big difference. Every single group that we've interviewed in Africa has told us that they crave like the kind of partnership that Water First provides, where, you know, we're providing consistent funding. So funding that they can plan on and count on and retain their experienced staff, and also funding that actually solves the problem in a long-term and holistic way. You know, that's what we intended to do when we started Water First. And, you know, I've found it both inspiring and a little bit hard to hear it from these groups that it's not normal for them to get that kind of funding, but I'm glad that we can provide it for them. So thank you all for being part of that. I mean, it takes thousands of us giving what we each can to sustain this every year and to be the strong partner that we think we are for our groups working around the world. So just lots of gratitude for all of you, especially during this time when it's been hard to grow. So we really need people who already know us to keep supporting us. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Kirk. I think there's few enough of us that, you know, if Kirk's going through and you need clarification on something, just, you know, unmute or type in the chat, and I'll be paying attention to the chat so that we can get your questions answered. And then he'll leave plenty of time at the end to ask us anything, you know. Doesn't even have to be about our projects. And Lish is also here. I think Lish is going to drop off right at 6, but if you did have a question about our youth programs, also Lish could answer those as well. So, all right, handing it over to Kirk.
All right, well, I'm going to go right into our slideshow, share that with you all. Does everyone have that on their screen?
Yes,
Nods.
It's such a
Good.
beautiful picture.
It's a wonderful picture, and it's our welcome to our 2021 Give Water, Give Life week. We're virtual again, unfortunately, but this evening's presentation is, we want you to kind of visualize it as sort of the conversations we have before the event, where we get to sort of meet one another and ask questions and get a little more in-depth information than what the actual program itself provides. So that's what tonight's session is all about. So I want to quickly start with what our presentation is going to be. As Marla said, we'll do a quick overview of Water First for anyone who's new, and then we'll go into speaking about our 2021 results and successes, prospects for growth next year, and then the Q&A session where share your questions. So Water First was founded in 2005. We're now 16 years old. We're old enough to drive, so that's nice. Feels good. We have programs in 4 countries: Honduras, Bangladesh, Ethiopia, Mozambique. We've also done projects in India from up until 2010, but didn't do anything new after that. And we are not an implementing organization. We partner with locally based organizations, our partners, and they are the ones doing the work, drilling wells, digging trenches, not us. And that's very intentional, and we'll share a bit why later. And to date, we have supported over 3,700 projects benefiting more than 250,000 people. So we want to talk a little bit about what's unique about Water First. There are a lot of organizations that are doing this work, that are providing water or toilets or a combination to people who lack access. What's different about Water First? What's this approach have to offer to these communities? And first, we want to talk about our focus on the health impacts. These communities, the marginalized communities around the world, they face pandemic-like conditions all the time. They aren't, so this is a hospital in Bangladesh that opens up every spring because there's a huge surge in typhoid and other cholera. And they have to set up a special hospital to treat it, just like we had to set up special places to treat COVID. But this is every year because they don't have access to toilets, clean water. But in addition to that health impact that we want to have, we factor in women's time and energy. And right now, women around the world are carrying water home for domestic purposes, cooking, cleaning, drinking, and their time could be much better used doing something else. And so we want to liberate that time so that these communities benefit from their skills. So that means for us, redefining what is possible in these communities. And by redefining what is possible, we specifically mean redefining what access to water means. That even if you are going to a community and providing maybe a hand pump in the center of town or the village where people can collect clean water, that's not providing the access that you need to accomplish those two goals that we just talked about. Because if you really want to have that health impact, families have to use 100 liters, 200 liters per day, and you can't access that much water from a hand pump. Also, this hand pump is shared by dozens of families. So women are still walking here, waiting and using their time in a less than optimal fashion. So you don't accomplish everything unless we redefine access to water as bringing water to everyone's home. So Water First is working hard at communicating to the world that, hey, we need to bring water to homes so that people have enough water and this women's time is utilized more effectively. And it also means redefining what sanitation is, because a lot of initial attempts at improving sanitation in communities, a lot of times it's a pit latrine. And we want to elevate that to what you see on the right, which is a water sealed toilet. You can pour water in there to flush the toilet, or you can have a flush toilet which you press a button or flip a lever and then the toilet flushes itself. But the key is that there is a water seal, that inside that toilet fixture, the pipe bends and traps water, and that water prevents odor, prevents flies, prevents anything from moving back and forth between the place where people live and the place where people's waste goes. So that's really what we need to define as basic sanitation, is a simple pour flush. And we would like to also add porcelain bowl, because you see that pink fixture there? It's porcelain. It's really easy to keep clean. And if it's easy to keep clean, then it's going to stay clean. If it's a rough surface, then it's going to attract flies. So those are the two elements that we really think are redefining basic sanitation. And so that results in comprehensive integrated projects at the household where people have enough water that's good quality, they have a really good toilet, and they can practice all the hygiene behaviors that they've learned because they have the resources at hand to do it. But we don't just mean focusing on a household, we mean a community. That means every household in the community, so that my health is protected and my neighbor's health is protected. And beyond that, a community also includes schools. So of course, schools should have this same resource, and places of worship, public spaces like bus stops, even workplaces. Every place you should be able to access water and access a good toilet. And that's when you reach that point that we wanted to reach, where your community is healthy and you've liberated women and children, and primarily girls, from that task of carrying water. And now you have girls in school, and they're learning skills that they can apply more broadly, and maybe they can become doctors, maybe they can become teachers. So here's a woman who is a teacher because she has the time, if she has water at the home, to apply her skills to a trade, so that she can give to the community what she really has to offer. And all of this is made possible because of our local partners, because what we're talking about here is a very complex set of activities that you're doing in a community, and you really rely heavily on local expertise to get this done. So now I'm going to get into our accomplishments for 2021. And the first accomplishment for 2021 that I want everyone to just kind of soak in is this picture itself and the smile on this woman's face, because her project in Uparal, Honduras was completed this year, and she doesn't have to walk for water anymore. And I like how she's touching her heart, because I think that gets at how important this project is to her. And this is a gift that together, the Water First community and our partner Kose Pradil and the community worked hard on to make a reality for her and for the other people in her community. So I want to thank you all for making this smile possible. The other sort of high-level accomplishment this year is that Water First passed the 250 beneficiaries landmark or benchmark. So if 250,000 is just a number, it's 250,000. But if you think about it as what if these people were all living in the same place? Well, that would be a city. That's a lot of people. As a matter of fact, that would be the second largest city in the state of Washington. So in 16 years, the Water First community has succeeded in providing these high-level benefits to what amounts to the second largest city in Washington. And I think that's something to celebrate, and that's what Give Water, Give Life is about, coming together to celebrate these accomplishments. And we aren't stopping there. We're moving forward. And in Honduras, there are 6 projects that are underway right now. Communities are working to construct spring catchments to capture clean water at the source. It's usually a high source that will then flow by gravity to their community. These spring catchments provide year-round water supply, so they're measured at the peak of the dry season, and then measured against what the demand of the community will be in 15 years after 5% population growth, so that this community functions well this year in the dry season, but also in 15 years, it's still meets the needs. There are 37 miles of pipe that are on trucks and driving back into these communities to construct the pipelines that bring the water to everyone's doorstep. And of course, the community members are digging every inch of trench from those mountain springs to the storage tanks, then out into the community, house to house. This picture, so all of these pictures, I just want to give credit to Kose Pradil for their, they're always getting better at what they do. And one of the things they've gotten considerably better at in the last couple of years has been taking really nice photos. 10 years ago, we relied like 99% on photos that we took in the field for presentations, because the photos we got from them were usually taken from flip phones, and the flip phone, it was probably raining, so the flip phone was wet. And well, they've gotten, so all the photos you've seen from this year were photos taken by Kose Pradil, and they're really great. So we appreciate that, because at a time when we can't travel to capture these images to share with you all, they were able to meet that need. But anyway, this community is San Simon, and what they shared about this group was that they, I think it's 97, 92 households, and together that group of people dug a mile of trench in 2 days. It might be a Kose Pradil record, just amazing. The process of building this project creates in the community people who know how to operate and fix these systems, and so they're becoming their own pipe fitters. When something breaks, there are multiple people in the community who are capable of fixing it, and they share the load, the burden of building these projects equally, so that they remain. Kose Pradil talks about these projects as this is an opportunity for a community to discover its own potential. And that's the positive side of this. If they really work well together, they're going to grow as a community. The negative side of these projects is that they're really hard. And if they don't do a good job working well together, it could erode their cohesion as a community. So I just want to recognize them for their skill at making something that is so hard it's almost a miracle be a consistently something that brings communities together. Meanwhile, our local partners are monitoring the work to be sure that it's done properly. You want to be sure that the trench is deep enough. You want to be sure that the concrete is mixed right so that everything lasts, that the pipes are fitted well so they don't leak. You got to make sure the quality is there, and they're doing a great job of that. And they've done a really nice job with the design. These are designed to operate efficiently, which is really important for a community that is lacking in resources, that may not have a lot of economic opportunities nearby. So spending a little bit more time and thought up front to create a really efficient system. The whole concept of a gravity-fed system is an example of that. The water is going to move from the source to the community without having any external energy inputs. That saves a lot of money. You don't have to replace any parts of a broken pump. Also, they put in elements like this, which this is called a brake pressure box. So in points of when you're moving water from a really high elevation down to a lower elevation, some areas are really steep, a lot of pressure builds up, and these things reduce that pressure without expensive valve. So keeps the pipes working well for as long as possible. And there are also 800 homes right now that are building these hygiene stations where at each home you have the sink with the water tap, you have a toilet, and it's the high quality toilet that we're talking about with the water seal, water at the toilet, so it's easy to have water available to flush it. And that other door is a shower, so that families, can bathe every day easily. And the showers have been incredibly popular. You become the subject of conversation at schools for the first 10 minutes of school. It can rain at my house every day if I want it to, in the shower. So one of the teachers told us about how for the first week after their project was up and running, she had to spend the first 10 minutes of class time talking about the showers every day before kids could settle down and start learning. So that's what's been happening in Bangladesh in those 6 projects. I'm sorry, in Honduras. And now on to Bangladesh. In Bangladesh, for those who aren't aware, our partner is working in an urban area. So these are, many of these people are moving from the rural area to the big cities to look for employment opportunities. Some of them are being displaced by effects of climate change, like rising sea level. So they live in what we all know of as slum communities. They're substandard housing, not built to any codes, and they rent from a landlord. So here is a group of women who've mapped out their community, and they've identified which of these living areas have, okay, these groups have good clean water and have toilets. These don't. And when you figured out who really needs access to clean water, then the women who know the owners, know the people who live in those communities, can approach the owner and convince them to put in a well, toilets that will serve that community. And then DSK provides the resources for that well to be built. And they're done by hand so that in very tight spaces, they can install a well, pipe it to the places that the water is used, and then build a toilet. That is their standard operating program for the urban area. But in the last couple of years, they've been talking to us about expanding their work to some rural communities. And in particular, they've been very interested in working with some of the indigenous groups who live just outside of some of the big cities, Chattogram in particular. And one group they identified was a Tripura community. They'd been marginalized on the outskirts of town, in the hills, where they didn't have access to water, toilets. And so DSK said, that's someplace where we could get engaged and make a difference. And so they did. They built a piped water network that captured water. Actually, at this particular spring, they captured that water in a holding tank and then pumped it up to the top of the hill. They're using solar panels to power that pump. And then every single house gets a tap and a toilet, water in the toilets so that they can easily flush them. And this is a community that we visited in 2019. The progress on the project was interrupted a couple times because of COVID, and there were stay-at-home orders just about every 3 months in Bangladesh. But finally, they completed it, I think, in September. So that's a big celebration for us. And we're excited about this piped water network that they've done, because they've always done those very small systems in immediate compounds where people live. And now they're gaining experience in something that's a little bit bigger, that serves a greater number of people. And they may be able to take that skill from the rural area and apply it to urban areas, where then there would be fewer wells in a small area, which is a risk of contamination. So DSK is doing excellent work and also getting better. The other thing that we've been working hard on this, particularly in the last couple months, has been our new partner search. We are looking for a new partner in sub-Saharan Africa, and that search was interrupted by COVID, of course. We were all set to get started in 2020, and then all travel was ended. So we've decided we're going to try and do some of that search by Zoom calls. And now that we're 15, 20 months into the pandemic, we found that just about everyone has worked on their Zoom skills, and they're working really well. We're able to differentiate between the different groups that we're interviewing, and we think by the end of this year we'll have 2 or 3 or 4 candidates that we'd like to go visit and hopefully add as a new partner for the future. At this point, we're interviewing 8 different organizations. They're from 4 countries. 5 of them are in Kenya, and then 1 each in Malawi, Tanzania, and Zambia. So that's our update on what's happening. I want to thank you for joining us, and I want to open up for questions. So I'll stop sharing. And I can go back to any slide you're interested in seeing if you'd like to check out any of those slides.
There was a chat question, Kirk, that I thought you could take first. Do men and women share building the projects at the same level? And what is the level of sharing for the women?
So we've seen more and more photos of women participating in the labor side, like digging trenches, and that's why I included that one picture of the woman carrying some heavy rocks. So I think in the last 3 or 4 years, more women have stepped in and said, "Hey, I want to work on the project," not actively, but for the most part, historically, the trenching and all that stuff has been done by the men. So there may be a little bit of a change going on now, though. Marla, would you say that's an accurate?
Yeah, I mean the women, and I think you described this, like Koseper Dill, our Honduras partner, they have perfected a system over like 3 decades now of making sure that every household does exactly the same amount of work. So within the household, and so every day you go to the job site, there's a Koseper Dill staff person who says, okay, today's task is this, and it's divided up by however many households are there. They inspect it, make sure that every household has done their share. They're given a receipt for how many, for the day's labor for that household. And then there's a big ledger that it's all, stored in, so that in the end, every household has contributed exactly the same amount of labor. And that's information we actually find helpful too in valuing like the project, because we can calculate how many days of labor were used to build it. But so it's up to the household then to decide, are we sending 1 household member, 3 household members? They can do it. They can decide for their household however they want to contribute their fair share. And sometimes definitely we're seeing more women, but it's mostly men doing the really physical labor. And communities also have a chance to decide for themselves, like if you have what if it's an older, like single woman, usually, unless she really wants to participate, communities say, you don't need to do anything. Like that's always been determined by the communities. It's never been an issue, but we have definitely seen like older ladies saying, no, I want to do my fair share. And, she'll do things like prepare a lunch for all the men, or even like carry water to the job site. Anyway, that might be more details than you wanted, but I mostly wanted to say like how important it's been for COSEPRDIL and their process to make sure that it's fair. So in the end, whether you're like kind of the wealthier household in town, or your household has 8 members and somebody else has 3 members, every household for their tap has contributed the same amount of labor. And sometimes there are households that are anticipating that they might want to have, like if they have a child that's near the age when they might get married and have their own family, that household will actually do twice the amount of work to qualify for having a water connection for that future household. And COSEPRDIL, I feel at this point, has encountered every single possible scenario for managing that construction and making it fair, and they have it down.
Do you guys have any updates from Ethiopia? I know they were going through a lot of kind of political upheaval, and I just didn't know if you guys have any updates from there.
Yeah, so the update from there is that they've been progressing on this latest project, Dima Jellywan, that we funded, and they're up to around 100 household connections. But it's been incredibly slow, and they've acknowledged that. And so we've kind of put a hold on the program there. It's obvious that they're not focused on it to the extent that that they should be for this project to move forward. And we don't know all the reasons why, but we do know that they're in a really complex political and social situation right now. So that may have something to do with it. But now we're going to kind of step back and reevaluate and see how we move forward. It's not, it may be with a different approach from here forward. There could be things going on that have eroded Water Action's capacity as an organization. They may have had extended years of low funding, and maybe they've lost some staff. We don't know all the answers there, but we do know that the results aren't what we expect, and they acknowledge that, and they understand our situation. We had a conversation with them a couple weeks ago. And now we need to figure out what is the future for those Ethiopia projects, because they're still part of the Water First project family, and we have a commitment to them, and we're going to honor that. We just need to redefine what that will be. But it's sad, Ethiopia is in real trouble right now. The Tigrayan army is 100 kilometers into Amhara. So this is no joke. And I'm sure that everyone in Addis is wondering, what's the future of Ethiopia? And the future of Ethiopia probably does not include Tigray. I think they've made that clear, that they don't want to be a part of it anymore. There's no way that any community, like any state in the United States or in Mexico or something, would go 100 miles into a neighboring state unless they're clear that they are okay with not being a part of that community anymore. So now the thing is, do they want independence, or are they going to take over everything and start ruling again? So it's kind of time for the international community to wake up, because the international community has been very critical of the Ethiopian government. I understand that it was a mistake to allow Eritrea to participate in that attack against Tigray. That was a mistake. But I understand why that mistake was made now, because I don't think Ethiopia is strong enough as an army to defeat Tigray.
Hmm.
Because when the TPLF left power, I think they took with them they had all the generals, and they took with them all of the military. So now you had an upside down power balance within the country where most of it resided in Tigray. And so Addis Ababa realized that they needed help to address that situation, and they went to Eritrea. And bad things happened.
Yeah.
But the international community did not come to Addis Ababa's assistance or really characterize the situation, I think, fairly to Addis Ababa. So that country's it's on its own, and it's in trouble.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch.
Yeah.
I'd add to that, not to I don't want to sound flippant, like I'm trying to make a positive out of a negative, but in Ethiopia and Mozambique, both our experiences there with water systems have helped us. We've learned some things from that experience that are, influencing how we're talking to people with the new partner search. So, we were definitely of the belief that, in 2006, when we funded our first project in Ethiopia, it was in Alamamuja, and there were, it had like 10, it was a borehole with a, so a deep well, a pump to a tank, and water distributed to about 3,000 people. I can't remember the population now of Alamamuja, at 10 different water points. So the expectation is that you have a water point, sort of near your house. It's piped water, you go fill your jerry can and go home. And, what that project and the others that followed really showed us was that, wow, even if people are reducing their walking time from an hour, from a totally contaminated water source, if you reduce that to 10 minutes, 15 minutes at a neighborhood tap with totally clean water, they're still not using as much water as we would hope to use for their hygiene purposes. Like, it looked like they're using enough water maybe for cooking and drinking, but not for hand washing, not for showering, not for, washing clothes and dishes, all those domestic things. So we were years investigating this, and it was in Alamamuja and a few other communities in Ethiopia where people started making individual connections to the water system, because they could. It was a pipe water network. It had plenty of capacity for, in terms of volume of water, and all the structures, the well capacity, the overhead storage tank, all of that was designed to provide water for all those residents, future population growth, and an amount of water that would meet all of your domestic needs. So it's totally fine that people were making these metered individual connections. And as we're monitoring those connections, we're seeing they're using a good amount of water. So that little bit of convenience, what seemed like a little bit of convenience, it's kind of like duh now, because none of us would tolerate this. We all have pipes to our house. So I would just want to add that it's heartbreaking what's happening in those two countries, but the experiences that we've had there are helping us get better. And Kirk had the slide, like, redefining what is possible. We were amongst the very few organizations. I mean, we don't really even know of other organizations that were doing piped water to households in Ethiopia or Mozambique. But people will pay for that water, they'll use that water. So we really believe that it's possible, and we want to keep pushing forward and find a partner in sub-Saharan Africa where we have some stability in the government, and can continue to show the world what is possible and what is the right approach for solving a long-term, integrated problem.
I'm not sure if this is a question I should ask Lish, but have there been any updates on like international traveling for the youth board students? Because I remember my sister in 2014, she went to Ethiopia with a group, and I've always wanted to do that, but with COVID, I know those have been paused. So I was just wondering if like those opportunities are possible in the future.
Yeah, so we are hopefully going to start traveling again in winter of 2022. And, I think we want to test it out ourselves first and see how it works. And then we do want to get back to having fully functioning programs like our water tours and our global fellows programs, because we believe those do make the connections that make us an organization that sticks with partners for a long time, that has people who were there in 2014 and now want to go back 8 years later. That's why Water First can stick with partners. So we want to keep doing that, and hopefully in the next year to 15 months, a Global Fellows group could be going again. And we'll probably have Lish join some of our early trips so that she can assess, okay, how is this working out, and what would it be like having a Global Fellows trip here, and then we'll get back to you all to let you know what it looks like, what the prognosis is for travel, because we want to have you on a trip.
That's exciting to hear. I was just going to ask the same question. I was excited to get the update too on the community of Tripura, because Cosette was on that.
He was
trip.
there, yeah.
I think one of the last groups to travel and went to Bangladesh. And so that was really exciting to see those pictures of that come to life amidst, everything we've gone through with the pandemic. Because for sure, our hearts and minds were there over those 20 months of, how is everyone doing in these different communities? So that's exciting. Do you know, thinking of that for the water tours and students, what would be, or maybe it's too early to determine what might be a country that you guys foresee being that, more possible than others, given what we're dealing with right now, and we'll probably have continued, some travel restrictions going forward.
I think Honduras is on the top of our list because of level of vaccination there is much higher than any place else. It's a shorter trip. It involves fewer transitions you don't have to go to a third country to switch planes and overnight. So logistically, it's much simpler, and our partners starting to feel comfortable with the idea of having outside visitors come. So things are kind of converging on that. Is that fair, Marla?
Yeah, that would be my best guess. And I just think it'll be also easier. I mean, it's a rural area. It's kind of easier to stay outside and not be bunched up in a small space. So, all of those things make Honduras a good candidate. They've been fortunate to be getting vaccines, from the US government. I don't know if you guys heard the announcement. It's been a couple months ago, USAID, gave some vaccines to Honduras, and some of those ended up with our partner staff there and surrounding communities. So, and that's process is continuing. So we're hoping that'll be Honduras. I mean, we'd be happy to go anywhere. We miss all of our we miss all of our people. Yeah, I think that'll be our first trip.
Wendy, you had a question early on. You're
Yeah.
on, yeah.
Yes. With your looking for another partner in sub-Saharan Africa, is that going to replace Mozambique or be in addition to Mozambique?
It's in addition to, although, you know, Mozambique is also still in a holding pattern because it's still not safe for community members to go back to their villages at this point. So, so I think we're 2 years out from being able to operate there again, to do the kind of work that you have to do a water project. And also our partner has to sort of, you know, Bashir is still missing. So that's a key component of their capacity as an organization, is that partnership between Chazy and Bashir. And so how does the partner organization sort of develop given that unfortunate situation?
Daisy has been, who's, you know, one half of the co-founder team of our Mozambique partner. She's been participating with us in searching for a new partner. And that's been really, you know, helpful to have her perspective. She asks good questions, and I hope actually, you know, I hope the partners we're interviewing actually feel really comfortable talking to her as somebody who, you know, is in their position. So as you know, an on the ground NGO. So Chazy's a keeper. We're trying to figure out the best way to keep her engaged with us, because we think she's a huge asset.
Fine. Thank you. I just really didn't know, considering what's going on in Mozambique, if you were packing it in there, or if you're, or as you say, you're putting it on hold until things improve. So good to know. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'd say we're in a holding pattern there.
Well, you had mentioned Kenya,
Mhm.
and not Mali, but another country. Are you
Malawi,
Malawi?
Tanzania, and Zambia were the 4
Ah,
countries where we have current feelers.
Yeah, I would definitely describe Mozambique as on hold too, because it's the region where we're working. They really need people to do water systems there. So we would like to be back there when it makes sense and when GSB is able to function. Any other? I'm sorry, don't miss the chat. Did somebody have a question?
I do. I've got a question.
Oh, hi, Lynn.
Hi.
All right, you were on my other screen, so I
No
couldn't see
problem.
who was talking.
No problem. First of all, I love seeing those slides, and love hearing, though, even though I'm involved with you all for a while now, but love hearing your unique approach to how you're addressing this crisis. And I do wonder, though, are there any other organizations that are doing the combination of the piped water and the hygiene projects? I just wonder, as I talk to people about Water First, I always want to make sure that I'm pointing out all the amazing things that you do and that are unique. And so I was just curious if that is really a unique combination, or if there are only a handful of others or none that are really doing that.
So I would say we're unique in our commitment to that as the solution to that minimum standard. As we're interviewing partner organizations, They all have some projects that are piped water and some projects that are maybe a sand dam. You know, they have this portfolio of projects, and every one is done differently. And they say, well, this one we did this way because a funder wanted to split $500,000 between 5 districts, and they wanted to split it equally. So we don't approach the problem that way. We approach the problem as, let's define a community, and now let's do a comprehensive solution for that community. If we're not going to do that, then this is just kind of, it's a waste of money, because you're going to have to come back later and do what we're asking anyway, because you're still going to have a problem. So I think we're unique in that that problem definition, and then commitment to a comprehensive solution long-term for that problem.
And did I understand correctly that you were saying that now that you've evolved from having a central water tap, to being piped in homes? I remember when I was in Ethiopia with you, and it was, we were celebrating that it was just a central, locally placed tap. And now have you moved, is that not even a solution that you're looking at now, with the penultimate being tapped, into everyone's home? Or or are you moving away from that entirely? Maybe I may have misunderstood.
Moving away from that,
Okay.
That was Water Action's approach. And so, we accepted that approach, and we said, okay, great. You think it's going to accomplish this? And that's what monitoring and evaluation is all about. They said, we think it will accomplish, these goals of delivering this much water per family. So we go back, we do our monitoring, we say, well, let's look at the meters. It's not getting as much to the families as we were hoping. Well, over time it'll increase, and then over time it increased some, and most of that increase you would find where people made individual connections. So going back with our partner organization, looking at the results, comparing that to the goals, talking with them, we all agree, yeah, we should really just start off with connecting everyone directly. And they looked at us like, are you going to fund that? And we said, yeah, we'll fund that. If that's the right thing to do, that's what we'll fund. And they were like, okay, let's do it. So, I think a lot of times what you get from, these partners is they will propose as much as they believe you will actually fund. And if they don't believe you're going to fund something, they're not going to propose it, because then you'll go to someone else and you'll give the money to someone else. So gaining that trust that, yes, we're serious, we want a comprehensive solution, and we'll foot the bill for it. That's when you get to their real solution that deep in their hearts they'd like to implement.
And I'd say that, Water Action was already unique. Like when you went to visit, Lynn, with those neighborhood connections, just the fact that they were doing a piped water system that was trying to get close to people's houses without being in people's houses, that's why we picked them as a partner, because we valued, we knew that the water needed to be much closer. We knew that a hand pump, one hand pump for a community, and 3,000 people accessing one water point was not a solution. So they were already moving in that direction towards the individual connections. So it was not, I don't think it was hard to convince them. I think it's like Kirk said, it's sort of unbelievable that maybe we'd be willing to fund it, because it's just not done. We're doing something that is just not common.
Kirk, maybe I could just add something there. It seems to me a lot of organizations that are funding water projects are driven a lot by numbers. And so if they can put one tap in the middle of a village of 3,000 people and say, well, we provided access to 3,000 people with a relatively modest investment of one tap. They think they look good. And so I think our approach is more expensive, but it is really dealing with the problem. And we're trying to kind of raise the bar for other organizations to say, if you really want to address the health problems that require a toilet and require people to take showers and wash their hands, then you can't get away with just saying we're going to have a tap that is 15 minutes away from the house, because then people will use 1 or 2 jerry cans of water a day, and that's it.
So
The same thing is true of, a lot of organizations are talking about technical solutions like filters. And filters are great for providing clean drinking water, but they're not going to do much for a lot of other elements of health.
Well, and I like to point out with the filters, so the water still has to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
The filter doesn't do anything to transport the water. So,
yeah.
Well, we support 2 other organizations, and our standards are sort of coming from what you guys do. And one of them is called Pure Water for the World. And they do use filters, but they also begin by putting an entire collection system into the village. And each house has that, and they all have, we insist that anything we support has the full health regime. And also in Nicaragua, there's a great outfit, El Porvenir. And when we first started, well, we visited them once when we were with Baird Norton Foundation. And we sort of convinced them that they should do some more than they were doing. And now they have a completely full program for every village and house area that they go to. And it's because you guys.
Yeah, we've been able to spread your knowledge and
you want our money, this is what you're going to have to do.
Well, Rob from El Porvenir was one.
Yeah.
He came to the forum that we had in Honduras. Like, it's been 10 years, if you can believe it. Yeah, I enjoyed meeting him in person.
Well, then they had us do a Water for Life rating of their work.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I totally forgot about that. A couple of years later. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we provided a lot of feedback on what they were doing. And now on their Instagram, I see a lot more household water connections.
Yeah, sweet.
That El Porvenir is constructing. And I always highlight hey, way to pipe water right to the home. This is the way it should be done.
Well, I mean, good for them for being open to having like an outside group come in and take a look. That's not normal.
Well, clearly someone whose work they respected.
Mm-hmm.
You.
Kirk, I had a question.
Yes.
Seeing all these amazing improvements around, how does that translate to Bangladesh? I mean, where does the water go with a poor a flush? Where does the water go, and how does that relate to all the wells and that kind of thing? It seems like you've got another level of problems to address.
Yeah. So what we like to say about Bangladesh is that it's incredibly complex to work in an urban environment. And the way they construct their toilets, the toilets fill into what they call a septic tank, but it's kind of a settling pit.
Yeah.
And then the liquid flows into whatever their local drainage system is. And sometimes that local drainage system is a surface source. And so, it's not good. And then the pits, when they're full, are emptied manually generally, or by what they call vacuum tugs, just trucks that suck the waste out of these pits. So we've been working with DSK on what are some ways that we could better manage this effluent that's coming out of all these toilets. And they've done a couple really good pilot projects where they pipe the waste coming out of each, like maybe 100 toilets in a community, and they bury that pipe and they run it to some place where they can construct a anaerobic digester, and then the water has a chance to get some treatment before it flows into surface water. And I would venture to say that those surface water, those outlets into surface water are cleaner than the surface water that they're dumping into after going through these anaerobic digesters. So they're working on some low cost, low tech approaches to treating wastewater, and they're seeing some success. And the community really likes it, because now instead of smelly water flowing through ditches in their community, it's all contained in pipes, and their community smells clean, and they appreciate that, and that's the motivation for them to keep it functioning. So there are some pilot projects out there that are looking promising, but it's a lot to ask of these poor communities to treat their wastewater when the middle class and the wealthier communities are doing nothing to theirs. So everyone needs to kind of get on board together and do it in conjunction, especially those who can afford to.
And it kind of makes sense, don't you think, Kirk, that it happens, after their immediate needs for water and toilets have been met. It's kind of the way we dealt with it here in the United States. We were dumping raw sewage into our waterways in the 70s, and now we have the Clean Water Act and all these new regulations, and there was a grassroots environmental movement. So, but we at least we were getting the waste out of our households, we were healthier, and then we addressed the environmental impact. So we're hoping for a shorter timeline for Bangladesh with some of these efforts. We're just trying to show that there are some low-tech sustainable ways to, maybe it doesn't treat the water to drinking water standards or anything close to the clean water standards, but if we're reducing contaminants by half, that makes an impact. And like Kirk said, if we're making the environment around these houses cleaner and more pleasant, that's also a huge impact on people's lives.
The city of Victoria
always, excuse me.
The city of Victoria
on my mind because my wife and I taught in an Eskimo village, and what we did is had a honey bucket, walked down and out to the ocean and just flung it and hoped that the breezes weren't blowing in the wrong direction, which happened one time. And in the winter, the men in the village dug a big hole right at the edge of the sea. But, when you only have 600 people for 60, 70 miles, you can get away with things that you can't in Bangladesh.
The city of Victoria, BC still puts its sewage into the strait.
Yeah.
Hard to believe, but it's true.
I think San Diego does too, don't they?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, Bellevue in Seattle didn't do too much better 50 years ago or 40.
No.
Yeah.
When I was teaching biology, I used Seattle as an example, eutrophication of a beautiful lake right in the middle of an urban area.
Well, and look how that's improved. So,
Oh, yeah.
it can be Bangladesh, you go through Dhaka, those waterways it's horrible. But I know it can be turned around. So it's worthwhile. We're not giving up.
Yeah, the waterways in Bangladesh are so bad, they've crossed over and become gorgeous green. They're like super green. That's how scary they are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
they
water
can't,
in the waterways there. It's like, that's a waterway? Doesn't
Yeah,
even
they
look like
can't
one when
measure
we were there.
oxygen at all. There's
I know.
there's no it's
I wanted to say something just overall what with working with Water First. I mean, you all have been tremendous in having because we partner with Water First in a bit of a different way as a company. What we hear from our customers across all different verticals is hands down how impressed they are with the level of the projects. They just, that's a standout. And when they understand that Water First does it so differently, it's not just a pump in a village. And because of that, women and girls are not having to stand in line and it's a full solution, they get it. And someone had mentioned the numbers. That was a concern with us if we couldn't show that enough people were helped. But recently we just did a breakdown for one of our hotels in Aspen, and we're going to be bringing clean running water to 30 people and a sink, a toilet, and a shower. And we were worried like, oh my gosh, that's going to be an issue. And it wasn't. They were like so impressed, and they understood that this was a full solution, and they understood that this was a solution for generations to come. So now we're doing these yearly reports for our bigger customers on their impact. So hopefully, you know, you all really set the gold standard, and we looked at so many different nonprofits, and hands down, it was a standout in really changing the lives of women and girls. And customers and our partners out there are seeing that, and they get it.
Good. That's good to hear.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a challenge for us, is to try to describe that, you know, yes, this particular solution might cost $5 a person, but it's not the same. You can't compare it to what we're doing. And so I'm glad that you're getting that response. That you know, we've always felt like if we have time to talk to people about why, that they'll understand. So so thank you for picking us and taking time so that, you know, we could benefit. And now you're out there educating, you know, other donors and other partners in this. So that's really great news.
Yeah, no, it's nice to see the response. It's not about, you know, more, it's about the quality, and them understanding that the quality is what then impacts the lives of women and girls.
You're a good spokesperson for the cause. That's awesome.
You all make it easy, so.
Well, as Kosi Bradil says, it is the opportunity to awaken the potential of that community.
Yeah.
What is a bigger impact that you could have than really transforming an entire group of people?
Well, it's been interesting to see what happens to communities once they have the water, that a school teacher will come teach in their school because it's a community that has clean water. Then the government notices that stuff is happening there, and gee, maybe they'll get electricity. It's just the beginning of really a new life. You wouldn't think that having clean water meant that these other things were going to happen, but it really does have that effect.
Yeah, that's been part of our learning too, is just, you know, we were focused on water and toilets and really solid community organization, and then we would see these other things happen, and yeah,
and health workers.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Bravo for you guys.
Well,
thank you all for
to
joining
all of you
us today. Yeah.
Supporting it. Yeah, I think, what are we at? We should probably.
We're at
There's
6:15, so.
if anybody else has any questions they need to ask, we're happy to answer them, but we also don't want to keep you all night.
It's fun to see the Water First community together, being so desperate and all over the, the country. And sometimes I know we're way out on the East Coast and kind of feeling isolated, and it's nice to just be a part of all of this and hear the updates and see the passion that all of us have for the work that Water First and, Kirk and Marla and the whole team do. So, and can't wait to be back traveling.
Yes, you.
We'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, from coast to coast. Good night,
Yeah, from
everybody.
coast to
Yeah.
coast.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good evening.
All right.
Bye.
Good
Bye.
night, all.